Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the Waran Shanmugam show. It's a beautiful day, yeah? It's Wednesday, I know, 19th of January. Can you beat that? It's already 19. We just started off 2022, and here we are with yet another amazing episode, yeah? This time around, we will have someone very special. But before I do that, yesterday we celebrated Thaipusam, right? So, for those who are celebrating Thaipusam wishes to all of you all. It was a very pleasant way of celebrating Thaipusam, I must say. We used to have kavadis. This time around, it was all the palkudam, yeah, the milk pot that we all carried. And it was very nice, very interesting, very pleasant, yeah. And we achieved the same goal that we used to do in the many Thaipusam days that we used to celebrate. It's just that for the past 2 years, if you all know 2020, 2021, we didn't have much celebration or we didn't have celebration at all. It was very homely. But to have this environment given to us by the government, I think thank you so much for allowing us to do so. And yeah, great celebration, I must say. So going back to the person that we will be having today, yeah, today we will have someone very special, highly respected person, and this individual need not much introduction, I must say. Yeah, very humble man. Yeah, talking to him, you can just sit down and listen to this man speak about anything and everything, and he has got loads of experience. You saw in the text message and also the poster that I sent. So yeah, let's have him here to share with us a little bit about what we need to know. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Let's welcome Dato Ma Wing Kwai. Hi, Dato.
Hi, Waran. Good evening and happy, holy Thaipusam wishes to you and all listeners and all friends who are tuning in this evening. And greetings to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have got loads of people already wishing if you could see him with him. She herself is a lawyer. We have got a bunch of lawyers already coming in here, Dato. Yeah. Hello and good evening,
Wonderful.
Dato Ma and Warren is what she's saying. Yeah, Lim with him. Thank you so much for joining us and a lot more people there. But we will go to that shortly, Dato. But I want to go deep dive into what we are going to talk about. Or rather, let's do this. I want to know what's your plan for this evening's session. Dato, what do you have for us?
Fantastic. I have watched your shows from time to time, and I found it very interesting lineup of people that you have talked to. But I take note that most of your guests were ladies, so no wonder they keep saying you're a ladies' man. Um, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Warren? Can you hear me? Hello, Warren. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we had a bit of a glitch there. Can you hear me now?
Dato, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but
Yes, I can hear you.
the video isn't too good. But you can hear me, right? Yes. Hello, Warren. Can you hear me? Hello. I haven't touched anything, but you've gone all quiet. Oh dear, Warren, are you there? Hmm. Let me. Is Warren? Can you hear me?
Oh,
Ah, can you hear me now? I see you
yes.
back in the picture. Oh
Yeah.
dear, what happened?
I think must be the rain. It's raining heavily here, Dato'.
Oh, okay.
My apologies.
All right.
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
saying that I have watched your show from time to time previously, and I can't help but notice that most of your speakers are ladies, and I suppose that's what they mean by a ladies' man. But anyhow, this evening you have me here to talk about some topics which are common to many people, and I'm sure you will find some common ground in this topic. I would like to touch on some very basic human rights of Malaysians, and about talk about climate change and the environment, and the rights of vulnerable groups such as the LGBTQI, and of course I'd be happy to answer questions from your good self or from any of your listeners.
Yeah, before we can even start, questions are already there on screen and also in my WhatsApp group. But let's start with this phrase: uh, "Human rights for all, leave no one behind."
Yes.
Let's start with that, Dato'.
Fantastic. That is a mission statement, and that is, in fact, the tagline of the United Nations of leaving no one behind, meaning to say it is we have a situation where it is human rights for all, and there should be no discrimination in any of the enforcement of the fundamental rights, and no one should be left out. That's what we mean by that, and that. Human rights for all would include not just the majority, but we'll also have to think about the minority groups, and as mentioned just now, the vulnerable groups. So, as you may know, in Malaysia, we do have a National Human Rights Institute, and for short, we are known as Suhakam in Bahasa Malaysia, Hak Asasi Manusia Malaysia. And we have been, or rather, Suhakam has been around for the last 22 years, being incorporated by an act of parliament way back in 1999. So, human rights in Malaysia is not really new. It didn't happen overnight. It's been a very long history. And I think it's good for people to understand that Suhakam really is a statutory body being
Okay.
formed as via an act of parliament. It is not an NGO. It is not a CSO. Yeah. So there are powers in the act, and of course, with powers comes obligations and come responsibilities. So one of the obligations that we have to do during the year is to carry out our various functions and come up with an annual report at the end of the year, which ought to be tabled in Parliament or laid before Parliament by the first session of the following year. So,
Okay.
work in Sohakam is divided into various groups. We have the legal and policy group. We have the complaints division, communications, education, um, finance, and also an office in Sabah and Sarawak. So work is distributed, and really a lot of the time is spent to monitor the happenings in the country, to create awareness so that people will know what human rights is all about. So we start from people from very young age. We visit schools, and we have creating awareness of human rights through comics. Yeah, known as the Atam series through comics. So it is all pictorial, nicely colored, and so on, so that young children will find some interest in it. It's not just all words. And we also have programs like SBM, Sohakam Bersama Masyarakat, which really means turun padang. We go to the villages and the what you call fishermen's villages to talk to them about work life and so on, everything that affects everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so Dato, on that same note, right? If I may ask, now I just want to ask for the sake of asking, so that the viewers out there who do not know would know now. Human rights, does it mean those people in the prisons are also included?
Oh, very much so.
Okay.
Human rights is definitely. simply because you're a human and you have rights. And I've always been saying that it is, everyone is born equal, and there's no distinction in terms of worth or dignity and rights. So yes, people who have committed crimes, they are dealt with according to the law, and they are sentenced. So everything must be according to rule of law and through justice. So access to justice and monitoring judicial processes is also very much part of our work. And for example, you have important cases of public interest going on in court, and we do have lawyers representing us to hold watching briefs. Yeah, they will go to court, place themselves on record, and with leave of court, they can address the court, and to put the position of Suhakam and position on human rights to, again, to create awareness even for the courts, because we cannot assume that all judges will know everything about human rights. I mean, nobody can assume that. So it's always a sharing process. So we are watching briefs. The other, for example, and again, very important aspect on access to justice is this: very often you will hear about debts in custody, what we
Exactly.
refer to as DIC. Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
only yesterday or today there has been another case. So already two cases since the beginning of this year, and anyone will say that any one death in a DIC, death in custody, is one case too many, and
Mhm.
we have been having many cases over the years, and a lot of this has been written and talked about, and we're always engaging with the police to ensure these numbers are reduced. So when we have a death in custody, we always have some form of inquiry done at our level,
Uh-huh.
and then of course we will push for an inquiry in court through a coroner's inquest.
Okay, so yeah, so we have seen not one but plenty of DICs, Dato.
Mhm.
And what's I know you mentioned a little bit about Suhakam's role, but what actually is Suhakam's role? Is Suhakam's intention uh, to reduce or not to have DIC at all? Will that even happen? Or that's the way forward? But what's the exact role, and why this is continuously happening, despite we have Suhakam taking care of or managing this human rights
Okay.
issue?
Let's start on the first premise, and that is everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Okay.
That's right.
So if there is a suspicion or an allegation that somebody has committed a crime, sure, the police are empowered and they ought to investigate to get to the bottom of the case. So if that investigation results in an arrest, then we expect that the rules on arrest, the rules on detention are followed.
Mhm.
And if they are not given bail, police bail, or not given court bail, then they are kept in the lockup. And that is where precautions must be taken so that they are entitled to health care. If they are sickly, they are entitled to health care. Most certainly, they are not to be subjected to assault, to extract confessions, and so on. There should be no physical assault and no deprivation of basic rights, things like food, water, and so on.
Mhm.
So whenever there's any shortcoming like this, alarm bells will be rung, and Suhakam will immediately step in and push for an inquiry, and then we will engage with the police either at the police station level itself or higher up, and the district officer, or I mean the OCPD, or the police chief of the state, and even the IGP, to highlight this. And if necessary, then of course the case ends up in court. And this is where we have watching briefs and so on. So the pressure is always on to
Mhm.
monitor this. Not just, it's not. I think the police must understand we are not a fault finding body.
Yeah.
Mhm. But we want to ensure that people's rights are followed. And for detainees in custody, there are some very basic rules known as lockup rules. For example,
Mhm.
you don't take a detainee out of lockup at 7 o'clock in the evening for purposes of interrogation. and you don't interrogate right up to midnight, that's not allowed, you know.
Mhm.
So, you know, cases like Teo Beng Hock, where he was interrogated through the night, that's all not allowed. And then, of course, we have basic or very standard minimum rules known as the Mandela rules, and
Uh-huh.
this talks about setting up standards and respecting standards of for people who are in detention. So it's always a rules-based approach. We highlight what the rules are, and if they are in breach, then of course we speak out against it.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching the Waran Shanmugam show, and we have got with us Datuk Ma Weng Kwai. Yeah, he's the retired judge of Court of Appeal, and he's here holding many portfolios, sharing with us loads of areas that he's touching on. Environment, human rights, and a lot more. So here now at this juncture, we are talking about human rights and Suhakam. And Dato, the question that I want to ask also is about death penalty. Death penalty is something that you have been fighting for the longest time. Yeah, Dato, what's happening? Share with us.
Sure. Um, right to life is a fundamental human right,
Mhm.
and we have been advocating that there should be no death penalty. I mean, the federal constitution recognizes this, that um, everyone has a right to life, and no life should be taken safe in accordance with law. So the law allows for the death penalty as it stands, but from the point of view of human rights institutions and globally, and United Nations position as well, is to abolish the death penalty. In fact, the majority of the countries around the world have done away with the death penalty, including many Islamic countries. Yeah, so we are in fact one of the few countries that still keep and maintain the death penalty. Now, while the position of the government of Suhakam is to abolish the death penalty across the board, meaning to say there should be no death penalty, whether mandatory or discretionary. But the move that is currently ongoing, and the position of the government, is a consideration of whether the mandatory death penalty will be abolished. This is where it is at. In fact, um, this was during the term of the late de facto Minister of Law, YB VK Liu.
Mhm.
When he was the minister, he actually set up, on the instructions of the cabinet, set up a special task force on the abolition of the mandatory death penalty.
Okay.
So we had this committee. I was a member representing Suakam, and this committee was headed by Tun Richard Melanjon, and we had a committee of quite a few people, including prison officer, members of the bar, and judges, and so on. And we came up with a report. So as I speak, actually, this report has been completed and submitted to to Bayu, Bahagian Hal Ehwal Undang-Undang,
Mhm.
and in fact, next week, the committee has been invited to brief the minister on the report in detail, so that he will bring it to cabinet, and hopefully, with agreement, this can be brought to parliament. As you may know, there are altogether 11 offences under our law which carries the mandatory death penalty, which means to say judges have no say. Once a person is found guilty, like murder, it is the death penalty. And for good measure, we have got 22 or 23 offenses which carry the discretionary death penalty. Yeah. So if this is accepted, I don't think the government will abolish the death penalty in total. I think there's a very strong section of the public that is against it. We are very mindful of it. But if the mandatory discretion is mandatory death penalty is abolished, it doesn't mean to say that these guys who have been convicted will be set free. That's again a misunderstanding. They will not be set free, but there will be a requirement for another sentencing process to deal with people who have been sentenced to death, and see what the next best sentence is. They will not be set free just like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's nice to hear. Yeah. Well,
Mm,
so it's not about death penalty, but again, it's not also about setting them free. Yeah. There will
mm,
be different types of punishment or whatever it may be. That's
yeah.
you spoke about people in prison and human rights. Yeah. Then we have got this another set of phobia that's around here with us for the longest time. Yeah. And we want to know how this is handled, Dato. Xenophobia.
Okay. Xenophobia, by definition, is the reaction or discrimination against somebody simply because he's a foreigner.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And sad to say that xenophobia is very closely linked to racism and racial discrimination. And we see this in Malaysia and even amongst ourselves. I mean, don't talk about foreigners, even within our local community, we have racism.
Yeah.
And so many things is based on racial considerations. But apart from that, when it comes to xenophobia, it's supposed to be directed at foreigners. So, for example, you have refugees coming into the country, you have undocumented workers coming in, you have migrants coming in. And when you have reaction from the public against these people, simply because of race and racial background, that is discrimination, and that is xenophobia. An example of Rohingyas. We have many refugees, and I think at the height of COVID, perhaps, or every time there's some economic downturn, the guns are directed towards people like the refugees and the undocumented people. So that we say is that, look, they too are human beings. They didn't run away from the country for the sake of running away from Myanmar or for the fun of it. They didn't come as tourists to visit Malaysia. They had no other choice. It's life or death. So they made a very big decision to come here. And what happens here? I mean, we in Malaysia, we don't have a law on refugees. We don't have a law on refugees. So they're all treated under the Immigration Act. And
Mm,
the moment they come in, they are put into immigration depots, and that's where they languish for months and years. You know,
mhm, mhm.
and I think as I speak, if I got my numbers correct, I think Rohingya refugees here, ooh, 155,000 or more.
Wow, wow,
Large
that's
numbers, yeah,
a good
and they are
number.
all, waiting to be what do you call, sent to other receiving countries. So
Mhm,
it is a tough situation for them. And technically, they are not allowed to come out to work. So they are just sitting there. And what about the children? They don't get a chance to go to school. And then you have health considerations and so on. So it's a very big economic and social problem that we have.
mhm.
And somehow it's always brushed aside. You don't read about this in the papers,
Indeed.
unless, yeah, until there's some maybe something wrong has taken place, and then everybody would jump at and say, "Oh, Rohingyas did this. Oh, the Bangladeshi did this," and so on. Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we were talking about human rights. Yeah. And Dato Ma Weng Kwai is here to speak about a lot of things with regards to human rights. And Dato, freedom of speech is also human rights. And then we have got the SLAPP, the SLAP coming by. Yeah. The
Mm-mm.
strategic lawsuit against public participation to shut down free speech. Comments on that, Dato?
Okay. Freedom of speech, again, that is a basic human right. But of course, we are realistic and we do recognize there's no absolute freedom. Now, let's get this very clear. Yeah. Whether it's freedom of information, freedom of speech, or freedom of religion, nothing is absolute in the sense that there are the four corners that one has to be mindful of. So you can't just stand up and say anything you want. And yeah, people think we have the Hyde Park corner, which we don't have in Malaysia. But simply because there are restrictions, and if you start, making hate speech, for example, and seditious remarks, and you're causing incitement of one community against another, this is all against the law.
Mhm.
And So there are restrictions, and you talk bad about somebody, yes, you have defamation law to protect a person. You call me a thief without any basis, of course I can go after you and sue you for defamation. But I know what you're going to ask me next, and that is about whistleblowing. I can read your mind. And this is a very current case that we are having. Whether or not a investigative journalist who makes disclosure on a social platform, whether that person can be considered a whistleblower to come and get protection under Whistleblowers Protection Act, because the subject matter of that disclosure has now filed a defamation suit, right? So I think what will have to be debated and decided by the courts will be whether or not that disclosure, which was what I understand was not to an enforcement agency but to the social media, whether that will come within the act itself, and whether the filing of a defamation suit amounts to a reprisal by a person concerned. Because if it's under the act, then of course the person concerned cannot take action in reprisal. So there you are. So there are parameters to freedom of speech and so on.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Dato.
You mentioned about SLAP,
That's right.
SLAPP. Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. It's something new in the sense that it's not something which is frequently talked about. It is a very legal concept and legal process in that, you see, where you have a problem that affects a community, uh, somebody from that community can stand up, go to court, and although he may only be affected as being a member of that community, he will be able to raise rely on a course of action because it affects him and the community. That's where we say, oh, he is coming to court on a public interest litigation, and he has got locus standi, right? The courts previously were very strict about this and say, hey, look, you are a busybody. Don't come and disturb us in court. We will not entertain your case. But luckily, over the years, the courts have been a little more liberal. They still have to look at the locus, but they are more what you call prepared to accept. And the cases will tell you that the courts have regarded many people as having locus because they are from a community that's affected. Now, opposing that is what is known as SLAP, strategic lawsuits against public performers, and that is where the other party to a public interest matter um, takes an action against the human rights activists and goes to court and get an injunction and
Ah,
say, oh, look, what you're saying is defamatory of us. We want to stop you in your tracks, right? And there have been cases, and there was a recent case in Kuantan where the lawyers were acting for this group of people. They were, it's matters concerning land and so on, and they were filing. They had actually filed a case in court, and of course, a lot of statements were made. And the defendants actually turned around and said, "Look, what you are saying is all very defamatory, and we want to stop you." Uh,
mhm.
so, so this is the converse, the opposite side of the same coin. And yes, the courts will have to be very careful whether to say, look, this is something which should not be said, and therefore you stop, public interest litigation.
Amazing.
Mm.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. We have got Dato' Ma Weng Koi here. He is the retired judge of the Court of Appeal. Yeah, he's also the Commissioner of Suhakam, Commissioner of Malaysian Aviation Commission, MAFCOM, Chairman of the SIDREC, SIDREC, short for Securities Industry Dispute Resolution Center, and the Principal Staff Officer, Legal Affairs for St. John's Ambulance Malaysia. And he is here speaking about human rights for now, and then we will be off to climate change and environment. Yeah, but again, Dato, you spoke earlier that you will be also speaking about the vulnerable group. Yeah, the LGBTQI. So I used to know LGBT, and then Q, And then I just found out that there is another A at the end. So I don't know. It's like LGBTQIA. So let's talk with I. But yeah, share with us about this group, Dato, the vulnerable group. And
Okay.
if I'm not wrong, Orang Asli is also under the vulnerable group. Yes.
Yes, yes. Well, LGBTQI actually stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex.
Mhm.
Please don't ask me what's the difference medically or psychologically or what. All I, well, the common ones are lesbian and gay, but the rest, they have their own definition, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is a group that is regarded as a vulnerable group, and very often we get complaints from this group coming to Soakam to tell us that look, we are having problems with at the workplace, even getting health services, public health service, problems um, and education. Sometimes they are assaulted and so on. So sure, when they do come to us, we give a listening. We have a sympathetic ear to listen to what they have to say because they are the targeted group. But I want to say at this stage, Mr. Warren, is this: many people, at least the religious departments, think that Sohakam is pro LGBTQI. For the record, let me say no. We are not pro in the sense that we don't promote, we don't encourage, we
Mm.
don't facilitate any of their activities or their lifestyle. We accept who they are.
Yeah.
But if their rights are infringed, right? And they come with a real problem, then of course we will seek justice for them. Yeah. So, but
Mm.
sad to say, a lot of religious groups are against what we are saying because they think that this is un-Malaysian, and therefore we should not be talking about this. And we are, in fact, Sohakam has taken a very firm stand to say that it is part of our obligations to actually to speak out for any group that is being impacted and being where their rights are being infringed. Much like the Orang Asli, um, we had a national inquiry in the rights of the state of Orang Asli many years ago, and I think out of the 18 recommendations after the inquiry, the government actually accepted all except one, and that is to set up a commission to look after their affairs. So this is where we are at. It's been outstanding for many years, and you'll find that a lot of Orang Asli affairs are far from satisfactory because, again, they don't hit the headlines. There's a lot of land grabs of Orang Asli land and so on. So, again, time to time, they do come to us and share their problems with us. I mean, the most recent was maybe about 2 years ago. There was this land problem in Kelantan. Where of course the forestry department says, look, the people who are going there are all licensed and so on, and then they set up roadblocks and eventually ended into some physical problems as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and for the viewers out there, especially like how Datoma was saying, yeah, Suhakam is not about pro LGBTQI, but a lending ear. Yeah, it's very important. A listening ear. They are there to protect because it's about human rights, and they are humans. Also for Orang Asli people, and which means to say that Suhakam's role is um, pretty intense. Yeah, Dato?
It's very wide. It's very wide. And what is of importance, is Warren, is under Section 4 of our Act, we have the
Uh-huh.
mandate to actually advise the government on issues pertaining to human rights, or not only in administrative matters, but also in legislative matters. So,
Okay.
wherever it is uh, uh, appropriate, we will make suggestions for legislation to be enacted or for legislation to be amended and so on. Um,
Mhm.
for example, hate speech. Hate
Yeah,
speech is one area where we have been advocating that we need a law for this, because we can't just allow people going around making all kinds of statements, creating animosity between the various groups and so on. Because well, at least personally, I feel that hate speech today will lead to hate crimes tomorrow.
mm,
And by the time you have hate crimes, it's a bit too late in the day. So that's why we need to have hate crimes, spell it out, and so people know the parameters. Of course, those who will say, look, this impinges on freedom of expression and so on. Yes, but then again, I went, if I can go back to what I said earlier, there's no freedom, there's absolute, you know.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. And you spoke about hate speech also, right? Now there are two areas of hate speech. One is face to face, physical. Another one is digitalized. So how is Suhakam into this role of, or rather, is it still under Suhakam when you speak about the digital hate speech, the digital defamation, and all that? Are y'all also protecting the digital world?
well, hate speech can be in two forms, written or oral. So whether it's digital or in the good old-fashioned written form, this will all be form of the basis. So it's not so much the mode of expression, but it's actually
Okay.
the content of the expression.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dato, human rights, we have it in Malaysia, and also we have it in other countries. Question for the viewers out there: how are we different from the rest of the world? Um, can you share a little bit? I'm sure
Sure.
because
Sure.
you have seen play people, you know stuff. Share with us. What's your thought?
Well, if somebody were to come up to me and say, "Hey, human rights is a Matsale concept. Human rights is Western centric.
Yeah.
Human rights is, something which the rich and powerful talk about but do not follow." Well, I would say that person has been very ill-informed.
Hmm.
His knowledge is totally wrong, because when we talk about human rights, it is universal human rights. It doesn't matter whether you are an Australian or a European, or you're an Asian, Indian or Filipino. We all have basic human rights. So that concept of Western centric, to me, it's really a wrong concept altogether. Now, sure, we want to talk about the source of these rights, and we go back to the United Nations. Don't forget the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, has been with us for a long time.
Hmm.
Yes, in a sense that who were the powers that were behind the United Nations from the very beginning? Sure, they were always the European countries and so on. But over time, uh, they have actually evolved on these principles. And they may have taken a lead, but that doesn't mean to say it is their form of rights. In fact, I would say that our Asian values and our Asian rights, to me, are equal to, if not better, than their standards. Um, we have national human rights. We are a member of GANRI. There's a global alliance of human rights institution, and we have to make sure that we act properly. Otherwise, we can lose our status. And for your information, Malaysia was elected a member of the Human Rights Commission, Human Rights Council,
Okay.
HRC, just last year. So there's good recognition. Of course, I'm not saying that we are the best, and therefore we sit on our laurels and do nothing about this. But we are much better off than many other countries. Um, to start with, like example, Singapore, our dear neighbor, they don't have a national human rights institute. But then the
Mhm.
argument is that, oh, we are so fair, we don't need one. But that would be another debate. But we compare well with Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia. In fact, all the ASEAN countries, we have got strong, even including Cambodia and Myanmar, to a very varying degrees of activity. Yeah,
Mhm.
of course, in Myanmar they have got the problems now, um, and Cambodia they are coming ahead. But yes, the fact that we have national human rights institute that has been around for 21 years. I think that speaks volumes of
Yeah.
where we are. I'm not saying we are the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a lot of room for improvement. But yeah, so I don't think anyone should come and say this is all Western centric and therefore don't follow it. I think
Yeah.
that's wrong.
So
We will
you
have to
heard.
find our own footing. Yeah,
Exactly. So you guys heard Datuk Ma, yeah? This is Datuk Ma Weng Kwai here with us in the Warren Shanmugam show, and he is talking about loads of stuff. He is still on the human rights aspect, and we will be moving on to climate change and also environment shortly. Datuk, we have got freedom of speech. Then we have got freedom of information on publication. Share with us a little bit, Dato. How, yeah,
okay. Freedom of information basically means somebody can apply to the authorities, the state government, for example, and ask for disclosure of public documents. Unfortunately, we only have the act in Penang and Selangor as two states having the state laws on freedom of information. And we have been trying to push the agenda for a federal law on freedom of information so that there will be access to public documents. Sure, there will be restrictions and so on, and then, but this will be a step in the direction. Otherwise, in the right direction. Otherwise, everything will be classified rahasia, everything will be classified sulit, and you and I will never get to know what actually transpired. So this
yeah.
is a means of having access to information. That's what freedom of information here really means: access to information. Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right. So, Dato, you mentioned that if anyone who were mistreated, ill-treated, they can go to Suhakam to report. Do you have a platform where these people can go to?
Sure. We have a website, and you can reach us through there, or come to our premises. We are located in Wisma TH Badana, 11, level 11, level 12. And you can just come in, walk in, and meet any of our offices and lodge a complaint, or give us a call. You can, call me many times. I get calls late in the evenings as well, or call our staff and so on, and we will most certainly, channel it to the right department, the right division to attend to it. Yeah, because we are a public body, and we are funded by the government, by the way, by your money. Yeah, so we have to respond to the public. Is we are not there for show. And we get a funding of about 11 million, 12 million a year, which is very, very small compared to the millions and the billions that other departments get. And considering the work that we do, and we have a staffing of about 80 officers, so every dollar is stretched.
Okay.
And but we need money for our programs. We constantly hold RTDs, roundtable discussions, seminars, webinars, name it, and we have held this because education and awareness is a cornerstone of enhancing human rights. I'm talking about RTDs, for example, Warren. We have been having a series of talks on business and human rights. Yeah, we are moving a little away from the very basic fundamental rights, because I think we have done quite a bit of work there. But we are now slowly progressing towards business and human rights, and this is again a fairly new area for engagement. In fact, the de facto Ministry of Law under Bayu, they are coming up with a NAPBHR. There are a lot of acronyms in Suhakam. Took me a mighty long time to remember all, but it means National Action Plan for Business and Human Rights, which means to say the government is putting together guidelines, blueprint on what business should do in terms of human rights. And well, glad to say that we have been recognized, and we have a seat in the steering committee to help draft the guidelines. So basically, you talk, or rather, you would read in the papers about a consignment of medical supplies have been stopped at the port of entry in America, and the
Uh-huh.
boat, the what do you call it, containers have been turned around and sent back. So this is all as a result of what the Americans say a breach of human rights standards. It says there's forced labor involved, and then of course they will say, oh, perhaps there's even child labor. So this has gets us going, because it's not good for the economy. Most of it is not good for the company involved. Definitely not good for the name of the country and for the economy. So we embark on RTDs to actually talk to all the stakeholders and say, hey, what's your problem? Why is this happening? And when we talk about forced labor, again, people think of getting workers to work at a point of a gun. It's not like that. I mean,
Mhm.
slavery is prohibited under the federal constitution,
Yeah.
but forced labor is often, sometimes wrongly, I would say, wrongly referred to as modern slavery.
Mhm.
It's a very emotional term, and doesn't really help much in attending to a problem. But forced labor is more appropriate, meaning to say workers, mainly migrant workers, are brought in. Agencies charge um, highly exorbitant agency fees, and the poor worker will spend months just to pay off the agency fees,
Wow.
which probably will not are not allowed. These are not the authorized fees. And then when they do work, the conditions are poor, hygiene is poor. Some don't get paid on time. Some do excessive overtime to earn more. Um, you know, five, six people in the room meant for three or four, that kind of thing. So these are all examples of breaches of their work conditions, breaches of basic work conditions. So this can be termed as forced labor. So this is a very important aspect, and we have been liaising with very big corporations. In fact, they approach us. They approach us to talk to their offices so that they can avoid any pitfalls. So we have had invitations from Petronas, invitations from Top Glove, invitations from some really big agricultural companies as well, to preempt any problems that they may have. And we are only too happy to do this, because it is all part of our work on creating awareness.
Okay, Dato. I've got a question here, Dato, on RTD, roundtable discussion. Are there who are the agencies involved in RTD? Are there public involved? If there is no, is there any plans for public to be involved in the RTD? Do you have comments on that? Do you want to
Sure,
comment on?
sure. Warren, RTD simply means roundtable discussion. Sometimes the table is not round, but the concept is there. Or we can have webinars and seminars. It's just a matter of terminology. But basically, it's getting people to sit down to discuss issues. And we most certainly talk to the stakeholders, the industry players themselves, and then we will always include NGOs and CSOs, people who are working in that area, plus government departments. Let me give you an example. We have a seminar on clean water. Right, so we have, and we invite stakeholders, we invite the NGOs, and we invite the authorities. So people like DOE will come along, the water authorities will come along, because it's no use for us just to talk to NGOs, because we will be speaking to the converted, so to speak. You know,
That's right.
we all be sharing the same kind of perspective. So we really want to hear from the stakeholders, because they are the people that are going to benefit or suffer from the consequences. And the departments are very important, because they are the decision makers. Yeah, so it has to be across the board. So
All right.
whether it's clean water or on plastic waste and so on, it's always trying to reach out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, Dato, ladies and gentlemen, we are with Dato Maya. We were talking about human rights. Now we want to go into the climate change and environment. Yeah, we were talking so much about human rights because it was so juicy and there was so many things to talk about. Yeah, human rights is something that you will never stop. There are always questions after questions, and I've got loads of questions in the WhatsApp. I cannot ask you now, Dato, but let's
Mhm.
move on to climate change and environment. Yeah, and Dato, COP26. Yeah, Glasgow just happened, and the question that I have is this: what's next for Malaysia, and what's the plan on carbon neutral or achieving the net zero emissions, yeah, by 2050? Dato.
COP26, or some people will say it is COP26, meaning to say it is too late to talk about it. But I think it's better late than never. But COP26 was just a gathering of people to update themselves on the science of climate change and economic fallout arising from the problems. But I think the government, our government, should not wait for conferences to tell us what to do or to lead the way. It's all too late for that to happen. We should be looking at our own problems and looking at our own solutions. So, for example, haze. Let me just talk about haze pollution. Now,
Okay.
every so often, come July, August, that's the hot, dry season,
Yeah.
and we will have the haze pollution. Um, and in fact, as I speak, tomorrow we'll be meeting a whole group, a coalition of NGOs under the banner known as CERAH,
Okay.
CERAH, and we will be talking about of course, the reasons why we suffer from haze pollution, the impact, health impact, social impact, and so on, and the way forward, and also to come up with the necessary laws, because right now the law on haze is just comes under general laws of environment. There's no specific law to deal with haze pollution. And then, of course, when it happens, we'll be pointing fingers at our neighbors across the straits, and we say, "Hey, look, they are the ones that's causing it." But really, in reality, a lot of the haze pollution is also caused locally within Peninsula itself. And why is that so? Is because in Sumatra, and this is a fact, they clear large tracts of land, jungle, through slash and burn methods for replanting, for planting of palm oil. Um, and a lot of the land is also peat soil. So when peat soil gets hot and gets burnt, the vegetation gets burnt, you actually have underground fires. So you have smoldering fires over a long period of time, and this creates a very large amount of smoke. And this, once gets in the air, the wind brings it over, we see it as haze pollution. Then, of course, we also know that many of the companies that are operating in Sumatra that are responsible for this kind of slash and burn practices, actually Malaysian companies. So
Hmm.
this is where that's a sad fact. So again, we want to see how is it that we can have a system or a law to ensure that the law will have a bite trans-border, because our law is only within Malaysia. We can't stretch our law to cover people that breach this in Sumatra. So these are all challenges that we have to think about. Um, yeah. So coming to back to environment, COP26 and so on. So really, the government should be up and running on particular problems. I mean, don't wait for COP27 or whatever next round of talks will come and tell us that, oh, flooding is a direct result or indirect result of deforestation, or floods that hit Sri Muda, for example. This is all because of clogged drains or something, whatever the real reasons are. Then we should be looking forward and finding out what is it that is causing the problem, and doing something about it before it happens. In fact, you
Yeah.
see, in Malaysia, Warren, we are so blessed. We don't have volcanoes. Yeah, you don't have above ground volcanoes or underwater volcanoes like in Tonga. We don't have earthquakes. We don't have really bad bushfires and so on. Yes, we
Uh-huh.
do have monsoons. Yes, we do have flooding, but these are all so seasonal and so expected. Things can be done about it.
Mm.
As often people say, look, our problems are more man-made than due to nature.
So
Man-made,
rightfully
I'm
so.
referring to all our dear politicians are adding to our problems.
Okay, let's not go there. But then I have got this question in the WhatsApp, and it's a funny question, but it makes sense though. Try to answer if you can, Dato. Does rising sea levels also means that Malaysian shores will shrink? A
It,
question mark. That's all
it
the
could.
question.
Well, I'm no expert on climatology nor on the environment, but have a fair working knowledge of what is being said. In that, the idea is to keep the temperature rise below 1.5 degrees, and if not, then there will be this global warming. Already, we are having global warming, and you are having the melting of the Arctic snows and the Antarctic snows, the ice, and so on, and this will create an increase in the volume of seawater, and therefore this will affect low-lying areas. So I think this can be proven scientifically. It's not just layman talking, but it makes sense. Sea level goes up, your land level gets affected.
Yeah. In fact, that was the one of the topic spoken under the underwater in 2050, where they speak about the fastest sinking city of the world. Yeah, Indonesia for one, where it's sinking at the rate of 6.7 inches per year. Dato, which means to
Mm.
say, it's not a pleasant scene. Yeah, I must say.
Well, luckily we are not in Jakarta or any of these low-lying areas in Indonesia. Otherwise, we will be having a sinking feeling all the
I
time. But yes, I think we are very lucky. We don't have such low-lying areas or low-lying islands like Fiji and what do you call, the Pacific Islands, because they will be affected. Yeah, or even Bangladesh with any rise in the sea level, they will be affected. And again, it's so sad that it's always the poorer countries that are hit. Yeah, third
Mhm.
world, fourth world countries, and then we pay the price. And look, many of the African countries are paying a high price when they are not responsible for the kind of damage to the environment. Hardly, but they are paying a price through long droughts or severe flooding. You know.
Yeah. So Dato, if I were to ask, there are many countries who are really going gung ho about climate change and environment and how can they protect. Malaysia, how are we in this pathway? Are we really into the wanting to bring about change, or is just are we still in the preliminary stage or awareness stage? Even do people aware that it is an issue? You spoke about haze, which is very constant every year, and the dry season, and many other issues. Are we Malaysians from the many scenes that you have seen aware or that there is an issue and we all need to do something about it? Dato?
I think the authorities, the powers that be, are aware. They are aware of the problems that are facing us, but sadly, sometimes a blind eye is turned towards that. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Plastic waste. Plastic waste. I'm not talking about the littering on the road, which of course is a very bad Malaysian habit. I mean, you see guys driving a BMW. You
Oh
are
yes.
behind you're in a small Perudua behind a BMW. What happens at the traffic lights? The guy will wind down the window and throw out his Coca-Cola can. But that's so Malaysian.
Yes.
So I don't know how this will ever. I suppose it's all education, but enforcement of the law must be there. But so when I talk about plastic waste, I'm not talking about the littering that goes on the road. That's bad, yeah. But it is the import of plastic waste into the country. Do you know that China was one of the largest importers of plastic waste?
Yeah.
And up to 2018, a few years ago, they banned it. China banned the import of plastic waste for recycling purposes. And Malaysia became a top destination for the import of plastic waste. So we've got loads and loads of containers bringing in plastic waste through our ports, mainly Port Klang. And then, of course, we have people who say they are registered, they are licensed to recycle. Uh, and yes, you have the authorities which give them the import permit, and they do recycling and so on. But then we also know that for every licensed fellow, there'll probably be some others which are unlicensed. All right.
Exactly.
So there's no monitoring and no supervision of these
Mm.
illegal operators. And we also know that even for the licensed operators, not everything is recycled 100%. Right. So what happens to the well, the question of degree? What happens to the amount which is not recyclable? They dump it, they burn it. So they have to dispose of it somewhere. So if they dump it, then it goes into our landfills. So why should we be importing plastic waste from the UK or the US, and when it's not suitable for full recycling, it ends up in a land dump in Ulu Langat or in Kepong? It's just
Mm.
not right. Why? Because of the dollars, of the ringgit. Somebody just wants to make some extra money. Um, so I think we should, authorities should please wake up and say, look, this is not money that we should be looking at. We should do other things, and don't have this import of plastic waste. We already have our own plastic waste, which we are not recycling fast enough, or to dispose of it properly, and yet we are importing plastic waste. So yeah, it's a big problem. And then if you talk to people who are affected by the smoke and whatever toxic gases that come out of burning of this plastic waste, of course they will say, oh, we've got incinerators and so on. But then of course we also know that not all the time incinerators are working 100% 24/7. And
Yeah.
so you get people who are badly affected, and we have met and spoken to people who have fallen ill, children who have fallen ill, asthmatic attacks, and all kinds of respiratory problems. So yeah, this plastic waste is something which we are raising our red flags. It's very much part of business and human rights. Yeah, because all right, we appreciate you have a right to do business and make the extra money, but please don't do it at the expense, at such an expense of the innocent public. Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to what Datuk Ma have just said, please, 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 do something about it. And you can be the change. You and I can be the change. You don't have to wait for the government or the agencies or any other bigger group of people to come by to do something. Only then you follow. You too can be the change. And I like what Datuma said, when you are at the traffic light, whatever car you may be driving, just think again before you wind down and then you want to throw out. Think again, because it is so very important what you do. If you have got children in the car, it's a lesson learned, yeah, by the kid.
Absolutely.
You know
Yeah.
what? It's all okay to throw out rubbish. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Throwing out of a piece of tissue. It's a very common thing. They don't want to dirty their car, you see,
Yeah,
and then they
yeah.
will just throw it out because they will think somebody else will come and sweep it up, or the rain will wash it away. That's
Yeah. So
mentality that we have. Yeah.
yeah. So the whole world can be dirty, but not your car.
Yeah. Yes. Especially if it's a BM or a Mercedes.
Guys, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. We have got Dato Ma spoke about human rights, and then he spoke about climate change and environment. Dato, before we leave, yeah, and we have got loads of stories to talk about, but we don't have the time. I want to speak about this MAFCOM thing, Dato, Commissioner of Malaysian Aviation Commission. On that capacity, I don't know whether you'll be able to or not. The world is, or rather Malaysia is now stranded. We cannot go out. What's the future like? I mean, when is the future as to the borders opening? Dato, if you can.
Good question. MAFCOM is the acronym for the Malaysian Aviation Commission. It is now, again, it's a statutory body. We have been around for the last 5, 6 years. and the mandate of MAFCOM as a regulatory body. So we regulate the issuance of licenses to operate airlines, Malaysian registered airlines. Yeah, we regulate the routes of destination, the frequency, pricing, even. We look after the airports. Of course, airports are run by the airport authority, but we have oversight. Even like, for example, where the toilets at the airports are dirty, we have our people inspecting. If they are not up to standard, we will impose fines on the airport authority. We don't look after the technical side of things because that comes under CAM. That's the Civil Aviation Authority. They look after the airworthiness of the plane and so on and so on. So we are the regulatory body as far as the licensing is concerned, but we also look after the economics of things. We want to make sure that the companies that are running these airlines are all viable. They are not in breach of anti-competition rules, and a big chunk of our work is also to look after the interests of the flying public, the consumers. So consumer affairs is a big chunk. So it's about licensing, is about economics, is about consumer affairs. Yeah.
Okay. So going back to the borders, Dato.
Hmm. Well, borders locally, they are open. We don't have as many flights as pre-COVID, or yeah, but now they're slowly opening. I've just come back from Kota Kinabalu, and I was
Okay.
able to fly from here to KK and from KK to Lahad Datu. So local flights are not a problem, just that the frequency has been reduced, and this is also because of economics. Not as many people as flying as before. But the international borders are not fully opened. There are some flights going to some destinations, but not as before. So we are actually waiting for more of these borders to be open, and then our airlines will be able to fly. This will depend very much on the health situation, the COVID situation. Because
Okay.
don't
Okay.
forget, it's not so much on our side, but more on the arrival side, destination side.
Mhm.
Because on arrival, and if people have to be in quarantine and so on, that may defeat the very purpose of urgent travel.
Yeah. So the receiving part is what we are not sure. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Okay, Dato. And then you have got the Securities Industry Dispute Resolution Center. Very quickly, what does that mean? And share with
Okay.
us.
SIDRAC is a company for it's a CLBG, company limited by guarantee, and we are a company under Securities Commission, right? We are funded by the Securities Commission, and it's a small setup. Um, we have a board of 7 directors and a small staff. The idea is to have people come to us with problems that they face when they invest in shareholdings and stocks and shares. So if you have somebody, let's say you invest in a particular counter, and you feel you are not being well, you may have been misled, or you have suffered losses due to something wrong caused by the brokers, or the agents and remises and so on. Then you can come and it's not just a complaint center. You can refer a case to us, but the mandate that we have under the rules and our regulations is to facilitate mediation, so that before the investor takes the company to court, they can come to us for, and we have experts as mediators to try to resolve the case. Uh, and if it is below 250,000, if there's a complaint, a claim made by a claimant to us, then a member company uh, has to respond. They have no choice. They have to come to us for mediation. If mediation does not succeed, then it goes up to the next level of adjudication. So the adjudicator then decides. Because you see, as you must understand, in mediation is the parties that make their own agreement. They make their own settlement. If that's not successful, then it goes to adjudication. The adjudicator decides on the merits or demerits of the case. And if a party is still not happy with that, they can go to the appeals panel. So this is what we call the ADR system, is the alternative dispute resolution system, where we try to do this without the parties having to go to court. It's a saving in time, saving in money, and yeah, so that the court's time is freed up to do other things. You know. Mm.
Okay, okay, that's all. And then it is so not right if I let you go without asking about the principal staff officer, legal affairs, St. John's Ambulance Malaysia. Tell us about your story in St. John's, and also what do you do, Dato'?
Well, I'm not sure whether we have time for Q&A because I would really love to answer some of the questions that you may have received. But as you know, and as Warren, this is where I met you. I met you through St. John Ambulance. Um, well, this is really a fascinating association. It's a group of very dedicated people under St. John Ambulance, where we provide not only ambulance services in times of emergency or just ambulance transport, but we also do such a wide variety of charity work. And yeah, but the emphasis is on first aid. So we have this whole load of members. St. John Ambulance is now, what, 112 years old in the country. So it's a very established charitable organization. Again, we are under an act of parliament. And the idea, of course, is to train not just our officers to be well versed in first aid, things like CPR, yeah, cardio, what do you call resuscitation, or things like choking. Somebody chokes, and how do you help a patient who's suffering from choking, or simple bandaging. Somebody hurts his arm, breaks an arm. How do we immobilize a wound and so on before uh, 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 well, before it goes to hospital. So we are in first aid, with first aid, the first responders. But over the years, we have actually spread our wings, so to speak, and not just doing first aid work and training members of the public in first aid, but we have done charity work in times of floods. Um, very often we are involved in flooding in the East Coast, and even very recently in the big floods in Sri Muda and down south in Muar and so on, Malacca. Our state teams have been very active in helping affected victims. And internationally, I think when China, I'm not quite sure which county was very badly affected by an earthquake, our officers actually went there to help as well. You know, this was early days, many years ago. And then, of course, even in 2015, if you recall, Nepal was hit by a very bad earthquake, 8.6 on the Richter scale, if I recall. And I managed to form a committee. We raised ringgit within a month, and we went off and donated first aid, we donated cash, and importantly, we help the Nepalis to form an association to train their people as first offenders. So that is so satisfying because it's not just a handout, but we actually train them to be, and they have over the years, trained at least 1,000 odd first responders. So that's really good. Money well spent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but don't let me take up too much of their time on that.
Yes,
But
Dato'.
I would love to answer questions if you have.
Yes, I do have. I do
Mm.
have this question, and this is a very important question. So therefore, I shall read these comments from Vimala St. Devi. Yeah? And it goes like this. The first question, of course, she said. The first comment, rather, is that the teachers can bring this message about throwing rubbish out of cars to their students. And I don't know how many teachers are doing that, but yes, Vimala, it is so essential and it is a must. Then Vimala goes on saying this with a question at the very end, Dato, and she says the core issue of such matters to be corrected lies with all parents and responsible adults. So, to educate our young ones, it ought to stem from a traditional and cultural foundation rather than an academic subject. Alas, what exactly is the moral and traditional basis for health and safety in Malaysia? That's question one.
Yeah.
Then, do we really advocate to instill this virtue and values to our young ones. And she has got this third question, and she says this: personally, are issues like this even being presented at the right venues? Dato?
Yes, Vimala, I think you must be a teacher yourself because these are very valid questions that you are raising. Sure, I think education starts from home from a very early age, and this is reinforced and supplemented through education in schools. But at the same time, apart from just telling the young the do's and don'ts, the authorities should also do their part, and that is, if you do not want people to throw paper and tins in a park, for example, then for heaven's sake, please provide the bins. And when the bins are full, please empty them so that people will know that this is where you throw rubbish. But so often you go to a public place, you will never find a bin in sight. So at the same time, we have to emphasize and say, look, health and safety belongs to everyone. It affects everyone, and don't only think of health and safety when you are sick or when you are hurt. And this is where the authorities must come in and do their bit. Safety at work, for example. We have very strict laws on safety at work, but still, every now and again, accidents happen at construction sites, for example. So this is an ongoing process. Yes, health obviously belongs to everyone, and everybody should, for good health, look, for example, the COVID problem that we have now. I am not convinced by anti-vaxxers. I still think that the better way to go is not 100% guarantee, but better way is to get vaccinated, one dose, second dose, or even with a booster dose, because I think the science is out there that it is probably more, it's better when you compare with not having it. It's better, safer to have your vaccination. So I most certainly support the efforts made by the government to get everybody vaccinated. Yes, speaking from a very personal viewpoint, I want to protect my own health. So I don't want to be exposed to somebody who has not been vaccinated. So yes, education is definitely the starting point.
Yeah, Dato, thank you. And we have got another question in the WhatsApp, and this is how it goes here, Dato. Yeah, are all Malaysians treated equally in Malaysia?
My pause will probably explain part of the answer. Um, well, uh, it's a very difficult question. I'll try my best to answer it.
Please. Yeah.
There's so many aspects to it. And are we all treated on the same page, exactly the same? I think probably my answer is no. Yeah, and you have a variety of different specific cases. Example, education. I mean, if you have a university for one particular race only, then you can't say there's equal treatment of all students. The facts will speak for itself. But other than that, well, I'm glad that when anybody goes to hospital, we all are treated the same. You will get medical treatment in hospital. I don't think there's any, nobody will say, you are this and therefore not treated, except perhaps what I mentioned much earlier about the vulnerable groups. People from the LBGT have complained that they cannot seek medical treatment. So there you are. There is discrimination. So if I were to say there's no discrimination, well, you say I will be talking through my hat, and you are absolutely right. And I will be the proverbial ostrich burying my head in the sand and pretending everything is right when it's not. So there are lots of things a lot of challenging things that we have to do to set right and reduce it to the barest minimum, so that we come a day. I don't know whether we'll see it in my lifetime, but come a day where everybody will be treated equal. Remember, I just said just now, everyone is born equal in terms of worth,
Yeah.
dignity, rights. It's the practice of these things that make a difference, and
Mhm.
people are being discriminated.
Yeah. Well, let's see how that goes. Another question, and I think I will end with this question. Yeah. Article 153. And I repeat, Article 153 is the of the Constitution of Malaysia, is the most controversial article in the Malaysian Constitution. And that is the premise towards creating an unnecessary and racialist distinction between Malaysians of different ethnicity, background, and so on.
Mm,
Your
mm.
comments, Dato?
Okay. Uh, just 1 minute. Yeah. Again, this is a very highly charged topic. Uh, um, and let me just get this right. Um, Reservation of quotas. Yeah, I think this is what the question is about. Reservation of quotas in respect of services and permits for Malays and natives of Sabah and Sarawak. So I think the person raising this question is talking about special privileges and so on. Well, it is embedded in our federal constitution. So until that is changed, we will have to live with that and to respect that provision. Um, but the question just now was: is it fair? Is it was what's the question again?
So it was your thoughts. So it
Hmm.
says, what are your thoughts as to the act being the premise towards the misunderstanding and also the imbalance in rights?
Okay, I think this mostly deals with racial equality, treatment of the different
Inequality, you mean?
races. Hmm?
Racial inequality, you mean?
Racial inequality. Thank you.
Yeah.
Freudian slip, but it's and that again presently exists in the country. I think if anybody was to come and tell me there's no differentiation or no discrimination, I think that is he's living in an ivory tower. Um, but the question is, how do we minimize this and to make sure that everybody has a fair go?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, Dato. I just want to quickly ask this question because it was from a student, and I think it's best that I asked you this question. Yeah, Dato.
Mhm.
This child says I was a 9A student and I had to struggle into going to the varsity, uh, uh, and the question is this: when will this stop? I
Ah,
can leave my phone aside so that because those questions were very powerful, very yeah, it's very emotional, Dato.
it is. It's a very heavy question, very loaded question. I wish
Yeah,
I had a crystal ball, um, but it is all so much up to our members of parliament, isn't it? That they are elected, and if they represent everybody in the country fairly, then we won't have the need for one university for one race. To me, that's not quite acceptable. So why can't we have everything based on meritocracy? On merits. If you're good enough, you're selected, you get in. If not good enough, then try again. But um, yeah, I think this question is more political than anything else.
yeah.
Um, and
Let's leave it as it is then.
difficult for me to answer it from the
Yeah,
human rights point of
yeah,
view.
yeah. So are they really elected? Is what Mrs. J asking from the chat. Yeah,
Mrs. J, hi, how are you? Are they really elected? Good question. Because if you talk about the process, yes. But if you talk about, every time we have an election, there's a redefining of the borders, and the numbers are moved around and so on. So really, that in itself is a flaw. And then, of course, uh, after they have been elected, they frog jump. Then, of course, they don't deserve that. We are against party hopping, and in that sense, they are not really elected because they were not elected on a particular platform. Yeah, and if they, you know, if they move on to another party, then of course there's always a change of their principles. Mm.
Yeah. So, Dato, the questions coming by are very favorably moving towards political and the larger larger space. Yeah. Let's not go there, Dato. We are going to end our show by your final message to the many people out there. We spoke about environment. We spoke about climate change. We spoke about human rights and the many other things here, Dato. With all that in mind, Dato, what's the message that you want to pass it on to these people who are viewing? Go ahead, Dato.
Well, we have a strategic plan for Suakam 2021 to 2025. This spells out the areas of concern that we have to look after. My one wish, and my term, by the way, comes to an end in April of this year. This is my sixth year as a human rights commissioner, and we maximum is 6 years. Yeah, so come April, you may have an entirely new group of 9 commissioners, or you may have a new 5 commissioners who would have finished 6 years. And then, by the way, of the 9, the last commissioner, the latest commissioner, is the commissioner in charge of children's affairs. So this is actually a success story where we have been talking not just about enhancing rights of women, but more of children as well. And government has decided to have office of the children commissioner. But what we are hoping to see is that one day this commissioner will be an independent person, independent commissioner, not under the wings of Suhakam, to have his or her own office to look after children affairs in the country. The other is, you asked me what is important, or what my last parting words will be, that, well, while we have this plan and we hope this plan will take shape, my other wish is that our annual report will be laid, meaning to say it will be tabled and debated in Parliament. Because over the years, it has just been tabled, meaning to say put on the table of the MPs without debate. So that's not good. What we want to do, and we did this in 2019 when Minister V. Kelly was there. We managed to have a slot in Parliament, short though it was, I think no more than half an hour, but MPs actually commented and spoke on the report. So this is what we are asking. We are in talks with the minister in charge to ask, please facilitate the report not just being laid, tabled, but debated, so that we will know whether MPs think that we are doing a good job, doing a bad job, and the members of the public will also be able to comment and see where our shortcomings are, and we will have to learn from that. Yeah.
Okay, Dato.
Mm.
We have got lots of comments, and some of them saying thank you very much for sharing, Dato. Rajwin is saying thank you very much. Agilan is giving you thumbs up, and Susan is saying thanks for sharing, Dato, and many more. Dato, thank you so much for sharing a good 1.5 hours. Yeah, 1 hour
It
30
is.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is so nice because we can go on talking about many things. Yeah, but we have to put an end here. But the work does not stop here. Yeah, you are continuing to do whatever that you do best. Please do continue doing whatever that you do best. And please bless us, Dato. Instead of we blessing you with all the success, bless this whole nation towards becoming yet another prosperous country with human rights at par, climate change all done well, and equality.
Equality. Yeah.
Let's put
Well,
it.
the best thing I can say is that let's maintain and upkeep the glimmer of hope. Don't give up hope. There's still a lot that can be done, and yeah, the small candlelight will turn into a big bushfire one day, as far as human rights are concerned. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nicely said, Dato. And talking about candlelight, I just read a message. It's not about how tall the candle or how short the candle is, but it's rather the brightness. Yeah, it gives the same brightness. So it's not about what position you are in. You can do the change that you want to do. Again, you can
Absolutely.
be the change wherever you may be. You can be just one person or a group of people. Change can happen. It's about whether you want to or you don't want to. We started off with Lim with him saying, "Welcome, Dato," and Mrs. J saying, "Hopefully, yes, hopefully, ma'am," and also Lim with him saying, "Thanks, Dato, for the fantastic sharing." Yes, fantastic it was, Dato. Thank you so much. Terima kasih banyak-banyak. Hope to see you soon, Dato. Yeah.
Yes, the pleasure is all mine, I think, and it's been wonderful talking to you. And thank you to all the listeners who have stayed right up to the end patiently. It's been a long session, but thank you very much. It's been a wonderful experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dato. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was Dato Ma Weng Kwai, yeah, and it was amazing sharing. I think it was very interesting because we touched on a lot of areas, and it was so nice because you guys were there listening to him till late because it was also about you. It is also about you. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much once again. We shall meet again next week, same time at the same platform. What is it? The Waran Shanmugam Show. Bye, everyone.